Story time. My boyfriend cheated on me with the girl best friend. So a little background information. I was 17 and a junior in high school, and my boyfriend and I have been dating for a year. But just a little backstory about when we got together. So there were definitely some red flags that I missed, okay? One of them being that he had a girl best friend. And I don't care what y'all have to say if that makes me insecure or what, but coming from someone who has been the girl best friend, I knew this was not good at all. Especially whenever we first started dating and she was still being super friendly with him, meaning she would hold his hand, she would hang on him 24/7. And when I told him I was super uncomfortable with that and I felt like there needed to be some boundaries, he was like, yeah, I told you what it was whenever we got together. So if you don't like that, then just break up with me. Looking back on it now, that was also a red flag because I feel like he was telling me to break up with him so that way he didn't have to break up with me, like for part 2. Part 2 about how my boyfriend cheated on me with the girl best friend. So like I said, she would still hang all over him and he pretty much told me, if you don't like that, then you can leave. Obviously, I did not want to leave because I liked him and he was my boyfriend. So I just kept putting up with it, and eventually, we got 6 months into our relationship. So at that point, I'm thinking maybe I have a little bit more authority, to be like, hey, I don't like the way that she acts around you. You guys can't hang out like that anymore. And they would hang out alone together. He would take her to dinner, which I literally tried telling him that the stuff that they do together is relationship stuff. And he was like, that's not true at all because we did all of this stuff before you and I even got together. So anyways, like I said, 6 months in, I'm like, hey, I don't like the way that you guys are hanging around each other. Once again, he gives me the same excuse. So he pretty much said that he didn't care. And the one night him and I were supposed to hang out, but he canceled on me last minute. And her and I didn't get along and she never Snapchatted me before, but then I get a Snapchat of her and him making out at his house. Storytime about why I will never babysit ever again. So a little background information, I was 17 and a senior in high school. And my parents were super annoyed about the fact that I hadn't had a job since I was 14. So their friends just happened to need a babysitter. So they told me that I had to do it. So fast forward, I go over there super early in the morning and the mom had already left for work. And the dad, who we're going to call Will, he was just about to leave. And before he walked out the door, he told me that there was a list of things that needed to be done before they got home. So their daughter Autumn, who was 5 years old, she was still sleeping. And I was reading through the list and it was just normal stuff like nap time at 2 o'clock, no pop after 7 o'clock, that sort of stuff. And then it had an arrow pointing towards the back. And when I flipped the page over, it said, by the way, Autumn is scared to bathe by herself, so please get a shower with her. And I was not comfortable with that, so I called my mom and I told her about it, like for part 2. Part 2 about why I will never ever babysit ever again. So like I said, I flipped the page over and it said that their daughter was scared to bathe alone, so I would have to take a shower with her. And I called my mom and I told her about it. And she was like, well, honey, that doesn't sound that weird. Don't you remember when your little brother was scared of the toilet and we would have to take him to the bathroom and stand there with him for 20 minutes while he tried to go to the bathroom? So I was super annoyed that she was even comparing those two situations. Because first of all, that was my little brother. Second of all, this is just freaking weird. So I told her to bring my bathing suit over and then I did everything on the list. Fast forward, Autumn said that she really liked me, so her parents wanted me to come over and babysit again. So I did, and whenever I was setting up the shower that day, there was a stack of towels sitting on the toilet, and when I picked it up to move it, a camera fell out of the pile of towels as soon as I picked it up, and it was recording. I was really weirded out, but I wanted to show it to my mom, so Part 3 about why I will never ever ever babysit ever again. So like I said, I picked up the stack of towels and a camera that was recording fell out of it. And while I was home later that night, I was waiting for my mom to get home when I got a call from Will. And if you don't remember who that is, that's Autumn's dad. And of course I wasn't going to answer the phone because I was super weirded out and low-key scared. But then he left a voicemail. And he was like, hey, so I know you have the camera. And this is kind of awkward, but I'm gonna need it back. I can pay you whatever you want, and I would prefer that we don't tell anybody about this. Sometimes I'm just really amazed at how stupid people are because as soon as my mom got home, I showed her the camera and I let her listen to the voicemail. So my mom called over Autumn's mom. So they called the police, and Autumn's mom kept trying to call Will, but his phone was going straight to voicemail. And she was like, yeah, he begged me not to come over here whenever you called. It's been a week since this happened, and Autumn's dad is currently running from the cops. Story time about how my best friend and I were dating the same guy. So a little background information, I was 15 and it was my freshman year of high school. And I had been dating this guy for 3 months who we're gonna call Jacob. He was a part of the popular group and was known for cheating on all his past girlfriends. But why would I see that as a red flag? Because I'm fucking dumb. Anyways, of course he was cheating on me too, and people would tell me that. At first I wanted to leave him, but the problem was he came from a super rich family and he was really cute. So in reality, I really only wanted to stay with him so that way he would keep spoiling me with expensive gifts. He would literally buy me anything and everything I wanted. So my best friend, who we can call Taylor, she came over for a sleepover. The whole night we talked about Jacob cheating on me and she asked me why I had not broken up with him yet. So I told her why I wouldn't leave and then she hyped me up. She was like, period sis, do what you gotta do. Well then I came up with this super good plan for my best friend and I both to get gifts from him and use him. So then I came out and I said, you should be his side chick. Like for part 2. Part 2 about how my best friend and I were dating the same guy. So like I said before, he was cheating on me 24/7, but he was spending money on me 24/7. That's the reason why I wouldn't leave him. So then I told my best friend that she should be his side chick. So that way we could both use him for his money. So Taylor started flirting with him to try and make him want her too. And I may have given it a little push by giving her his Snapchat, so she tried to slide in his DMs and then also tried texting him on Snapchat. At first, his cheating ass did not want to do anything with her. And I was like, the one time. Anyways, he was like, I'm with your best friend right now. I don't think we should do this. But of course, like all boys who cheat, he ended up meeting up with her. And they started sneaking around. Meanwhile, I knew all the tea. Taylor was telling me everything. Taylor started getting things from him 24/7 and he looked so stupid. Well, then we decided to fuck with him one more time. Like for part 3. Story time about how my best friend and I were dating the same guy at the same time. So like I said, she was sneaking around with him. Meanwhile, she was telling me everything. He was buying her gifts, he was buying me gifts, so everything was perfect. But we had one little trick left up our sleeves. We decided that we would both make a wish list and put everything that we wanted on there. And at the end of the month, we would have a sleepover, bring everything that we got. Well, on the night of the sleepover, we brought everything, and let me tell you, this filled up my king-size bed. There was stuff all on the floor. So what did I do? I took a video of it, and I uploaded it to Instagram, tagging him and his friends, and wrote a long-ass caption, basically saying, if you cross me, this is what will happen. You'll get played. He was so embarrassed, his friends and everyone at school basically laughed at his dumb ass. Well, he ended up telling his mommy about it, and they came and talked to my parents, and they pretty much just told them to get the fuck over it, like your son did what he did willingly. She didn't do anything wrong. She meaning me. My dad was kind of mad at me, but my mom was super impressed about it, and we laugh about it all the time. Story time about how my best friend kissed the guy that I liked right in front of me. So a little background information, I was 14 and in 8th grade. And we're gonna call my best friend Sophia. We were in a friend group of 3. And the other person in our friend group, his name was Josh. And that just happened to be the boy that I really liked. And Sophia knew how much I liked him. Like I would tell her all the time how excited I was, you know, that we were hanging out. And she would be like, oh my god, I'm so happy for you. Like you guys would be so cute. Just a bunch of fake shit. So the one day we're all sitting in our free period, super bored, and our friend Dylan says, hey, why don't we play spin the bottle? With a water bottle, of course. So it was us 4 and a few other kids from our class. Well, Sophia decided to spin the bottle first. And of course, who does it land on? Josh. And I'm sitting back like I have nothing to worry about. My best friend wouldn't do that to me. Well, of course I was wrong. I thought she was going to apologize, but after she gave me a very smirky smile, well, they started hanging out more and I felt extremely left out, so I just decided to forgive her. Story time about how my aunt kidnapped my dog. So a little background information, I was 14 and in 8th grade. I had a 4-month-old puppy that I would take care of because since I wanted the dog, my parents were like, you have to take care of him, blah, 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 blah. So I put him in the crate, went to school, came home, thought everything was good, until my dog is missing. So now I'm like, what the fuck? Because it's literally a 4-month-old puppy. Anyways, I searched around the house to see if he maybe escaped or he was hiding under the beds or something, but he was nowhere to be found. So I asked the neighbors to keep a lookout for him and even put up missing posters everywhere. And when my parents got home, I told them the situation and they were like, oh, honey, he probably ran away, but he'll probably be back tonight. Yeah, fast forward 5 hours, he still wasn't home. So my dad was like, go to sleep. He'll be back in the morning. So I went to sleep, or I tried, but then I couldn't sleep, so I got up and got some melatonin. Like for part 2. Part 2 about how my aunt kidnapped my dog. So like I said, my dad was like, go to sleep, and I went to try to go to sleep, but I couldn't because my dog was freaking missing. So I go downstairs to get some melatonin when I hear my dad talking shit on the phone to my aunt. He was talking about something with the dog, but my dumbass starts walking across the floor, and all of a sudden the floor creaks, so I run upstairs, get back into bed, and go to sleep. So the next day after school, I tell my dad I'm going to go to my aunt's house, because she didn't live too far away, and I thought, okay, well, maybe she's seen him run around her neighborhood, whatever. And he was like super off about it at first, but he was like, fine, whatever, go to your aunt's house. So I get to her house, and I walk in, and I hear dogs barking. One dog, because she didn't have any fucking dogs. And I walk over to the backyard, and what do you know, my puppy is sitting in her fucking backyard. So I brought my dog home and told my dad. And he got really mad. It turns out he didn't even want the dog in the first place, so he gave her to my aunt. He apologized and we're good now, but story time about how my boyfriend cheated on me with his best friend's sister. So a little background information, I was 15 and in 9th grade, and we're gonna call my boyfriend Alex. Alex and I had been together for 6 months, and at the beginning of our relationship, his best friend, who we're gonna call Caleb, him and I literally despised each other. But Alex would always want all 3 of us to hang out, so we decided that we had to get along. So we decided to keep it civil only when we were with Alex. Well, fast forward, all of a sudden, Caleb's grown-ass sister starts hanging out with Caleb and Alex 24/7. And it was weird because she was like a senior hanging out with a freshman. But I didn't think anything of it at first. Well, then out of nowhere, while I was at school, like a week later, Alex says that him and I need to have a talk. So we start walking away from Caleb, and as we're walking away, Caleb looks at me and gives me like this good luck look. Then he told me that he wanted us to take a break. Like for part 2. Part 2 about how my boyfriend cheated on me with his best friend's sister. So like I said, he tells me that we need to talk, and then he goes, I think we should take a break. Like, what do you mean take a break? Well, funny thing, throughout this whole break, he was still being touchy with me, still acting like we were in a whole ass relationship. And the whole time I was acting like I was fine, so that way I didn't want him to feel bad for me and felt like he had to get back together with me. And he was acting like nothing happened. Like I said, it was getting to the point where all my friends had started asking if him and I were back together. And I had to be like, no, we're not back together yet. Well, then Friday rolls around, aka 2 weeks later, and he tells me that he misses me. Shocker. So then he said he wanted to get back together. I said yes, obviously, because I still really liked him and I was a dumbass not to see the red flags. Well, now that it was second time around of us being together, I started to notice the first flags that I didn't notice in the beginning of our relationship. Like the one time he went to the mall with his friends and he gave these girls his Snapchat. He wasn't going to tell me about it, but then his friends told me, like for part 3. Part 3 about how my boyfriend cheated on me with his best friend's sister. So like I said, I started noticing red flags. Well, when I had confronted him about the Snapchat thing, he told me that he felt bad if he didn't give it to them because he didn't want to be mean. Another red flag is that he would never, ever, 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 ever let me touch his phone. Like if he even saw my eyes look at his phone for 0.2 seconds, he would grab it real quick. Anyways, back to him getting with Caleb's sister. When we had got back together after our break, this one girl came up to me and she was like, hey, I have to tell you something. I didn't think it was going to be anything about my relationship with Alex, but here we go. She goes, he broke up with you to hook up with some other girl. So obviously I'm fuming. I go up to him and I'm like, did you break up with me to go and hook up with another girl? He goes, that's in the past. Why are you mad about it? Like we were broken up. Clearly he thought it was okay just to break up whenever you want to go do shit with someone else. Apparently she said that they could do stuff if we broke up, but I ended up finding out that she does this to all of her little brother's friends. Story time about how I caught my grandma with my dad. So a little background information, I was 16, and it was the first day of 11th grade. Well, my friend wanted me to come to the mall with her after school that day. She was like, screw your grandma's birthday, just come to the mall with me. So the plan was I would sneak onto my best friend's bus after school and skip my grandma's birthday. By the way, my grandma was low-key a hoe. Like, half of her kids won't even bring their husbands around her, because after she got their numbers, she would end up sending nude pictures to them. Anyway, so the end of the day rolls around and I go to my locker to get my book bag when I'm called down to the office. So I go down to the office and my mom is there to pick me up because she said that we needed to do a few things before our grandma's party. Well, my grandma was at our house getting ready and my mom forgot her wallet at home, so when we went back home, I went to go put my book bag in the house. When I walk in and I see my grandma and dad on the couch, and I'm not even going to say what they were doing, and my mom is walking past them like she didn't see anything. So after that, I called one of my aunts and asked if I could stay with her for a while, and now I don't talk to any of them.
Storytime about how I found out that my boyfriend was trying to get with another girl on Valentine's Day. Okay, there's a lot that goes into this story time, so let me break it down for you real quick. I was a sophomore and my boyfriend and I had been dating for about 4 months now. And he was a junior. Well, there was this girl that he was for some reason obsessed with in his Spanish class. She was a freshman, and I know you're probably thinking, oh, well, how did you know he was obsessed with her? Well, he would Snapchat this girl 24/7.
Even his friends told me he was obsessed with her.
So I talked to him and I told him I was uncomfortable with how much he was talking to this girl. And he said, oh, okay, I'm sorry, I'll block her. Now, I didn't ask him to do that, but it made me feel more confident in how he felt about me. Well, Valentine's Day comes around. And we didn't talk all day until he came to pick me up. I wished him a happy Valentine's Day and got left undelivered. So we get to the restaurants and we decide to put our phones at the end of the table so that way we would be more focused on each other. Well, he goes to the bathroom and then I see this name pop up on his phone. Like for part 2.
Part 2. So, like I said, I saw this name on his phone, and there was something special about this name. So, whenever I kept streaks, I would put the word streak, and then an emoji, and then the person's name. And he got the idea that instead of keeping her name, he would put it as streak. So I was like, that's really fucking weird. And at first I was like, what the fuck? So I opened his phone, and what do you know? It's from that girl. And she was replying back to a big paragraph that he sent her. And we had school that same day. So at 6:30 in the morning, this girl got a big paragraph from my boyfriend about how she's such a beautiful, amazing girl, and that she deserves somebody who's going to take her out and buy her flowers and stuff. And how if she wanted to go out to dinner, let him know. He took an extremely long time in the bathroom, so the waiter came to our table. So I ordered $300 worth of food for myself. So when he came back, I told him that I had to go call my mom, and I left. And he was stuck with a $400 bill.
Story time about my worst trip off LSD. So one of the kids in my friend group was about to leave for Arizona. And we would always talk about how we need to trip together before he leaves. And anytime that I would trip off acid, I would go to my one plug. Well, he ran out, so we had to go to somebody else. And I've never tried this kid's stuff before. I just said, fuck it, YOLO. Which should not have been my motto at the time. But it was. So that night, we're in the car, and one of our friends is driving because he's sober, obviously. And before I put the tab on my tongue, I started to get really nervous. And I have never felt like that before I've taken acid. But I kind of just said fuck it, and I put it on my tongue. So we go pick up 2 more people that I'm not really close with. So then we make our way over to our other friend's apartment. And I'm kind of feeling it, but not really. But then as soon as we walk into that apartment, I start tripping balls. And you know, everything was going good. But then my dumb ass decided to look in the fucking mirror. And as soon as I look in the mirror, I see myself smile back at me, like for part 2. Okay, part 2. So like I said, I look in the mirror and I see myself smiling back at me. And that's whenever everything went south so quick. I sat on the bed, tried to pull myself together because I didn't want to make a fucking scene in front of everybody. But then I got caught in this fucking loop. And if you don't know what the loop is, then I'm going to tell you what it is. It's basically where you feel like you're doing the same thing over and over and over again. And then I started looking around at everybody and it looked like their faces were melting. One of my friends got up off his chair, walked to the other side of the room, and I watched him do that. But when I looked back over at the fucking chair, he was still sitting there. So I looked at my one friend that was sober, who I was actually really close with, and I think he saw the look in my eye and he was like, do you want to leave now? And I just shook my head, yeah, like I could not deal with that shit anymore. So we go to his car and then we drive to my boyfriend's house. Because I could not go home. I would have got crucified. Well, we get in the house and as soon as his mom sees me, she knows that something's wrong. Like for part 3.
Okay, part 3. So like I said, I walked in and she knew that something was wrong with me right away. Because she was like, oh, I have a letter from your boyfriend. And usually I would run up, grab it, read it really quickly. Because I would only get like 1 letter a week. But instead I ran downstairs because her face was fucking melting. So 5 minutes later, she has to come downstairs and help me get dressed into my pajamas because I forgot how to dress myself. I didn't want to be left alone that night, so my friend stayed in the basement with me. So he went and tried to go to sleep. But he couldn't because I was watching Butterfly Effect for 8 hours straight. Like, that was the only thing that could calm me down. But I still don't even know all the freaking words to it, which is weird. Like, he would try to change the video and somehow I end up back to Butterfly Effect. And then he tried to kiss me. So he left the next morning because he had to go to work, which was at like 11 a.m. And I took this tab at 8 p.m. the day before. So I was getting texts like, where are you? You're supposed to be home now. So I had to go home and act normal in front of everybody while I'm still tripping balls. And I also got grounded for coming home late because I could not come home at the right time because I was tripping so hard. And this lasted for about 24 hours. Crazy story time about how my mom kidnapped my sister. So my mom and dad split whenever I was really young. And at this time, they were always in and out of court battling for custody over my sister and I. Well, the one day my dad drives my mom downtown to the courthouse because she didn't have a ride. And before she gets out of the car, she's like, "Can I give the girls a hug?" And my dad was like, "Yeah, go ahead." Little background information. I was more of a daddy's girl. My sister was more of a mommy's girl, which is probably the reason why she took her. I was sitting by the window, my sister was sitting in the middle seat. So she gives me a hug. Next thing I know, my sister's seatbelt was unbuckled and my mom was running across the street with her in the middle of downtown. Didn't even look for cars. So my dad got out of the car, ran over, grabbed her, picked both of them up, and walked over to the sidewalk, and my mom was screaming bloody murder. So this guy called the cops, and my dad was trying to show them custody papers because he had full custody. But the cop knew my mom, so he let her take my sister. We got her back, but I didn't see this bitch for like 4 months. Toxic best friend story time. So I had an off and on friendship with this one girl. In my freshman year, we became friends again. And she had this boyfriend named Nicholas. And they literally fought 24/7. And every time she would fight, she would be like, "Can you please fix this for me?" So she would have me add him on Snapchat, fix it, and then block him. And guys, this literally was happening like 5 times a week. And then after she asked me to do that the first few times, I realized she started going through my phone. And when I say my phone, I mean my whole motherfucking phone. A bitch was going through my Snapchats, DMs, text messages, and I didn't know how to confront her because that's just weird. So the one day I was getting ready at her house because we were about to go out, and she was like, "I'm grounded, can I use your phone real quick?" And I was like, "Yeah, just let me Snapchat this last person back." And she goes, "No," and rips the phone out of my hand. And she starts going through my Snapchat right in front of me. And I had a streak with this kid named Nick. She goes up to me and says, "What the fuck is this? Like for part 2.